Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile. Today we have the Garbodor deck. You're going to be taking the trash out with your opponents and destroying their Pokemon. So Garbodor is actually an idea I tried a while back, back all the way from VIV Voltage. This card is using the Trash Cyclone attack that does 30 damage for each Pokemon tool in your discard pile, then shuffle those cards into your deck. So back in the day I had this idea. It was a little bit better back then just because the HPs and expectations were a little bit lower. V-Stars are a little bit of a pay grade above Garbodor compared to V-Maxes, which give up 3 prizes, but we're back with a little bit of a list. I've improved a little bit, added some more consistency, and made it at least passable. Gotten about a 70% win rate, but I am on the lower ladders right now because I haven't been playing too much PTCGO. One benefit of this card is that it hits Shadow Rider for weakness, so despite the fact that Shadow Rider does potentially look like a terrible matchup, you can actually blow up all of their attackers, Gengar, Mimikyu, Trevnor, and the Shadow Rider itself super easily, so that matchup is honestly free as long as you set up, though that is a difficulty. So let's get right into the list. We do play 4 copies of Trubbish, but we do play a 3-1 split. 3 copies of the 70 HP Trubbish from VIV Voltage with the Lucky Find attack, which allows you to search your deck for an item card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. This is actually usable because we have DCE and Twin. However, we can't use the other attack. The other attack just doesn't work because we don't have Dark Energy, but it's not worth using anyway, so don't worry about it. We do have 1 copy of the Trubbish all the way back from Noble Victories. This is an optional attack, but I think it's good to give yourself options in these kinds of decks where there is good choices. This one has the Garbage Collection attack. For a single colorless, again, can be used with Twin or DCE. Put a card from your pile on top of your deck. So if you find yourself in a tough situation, I was able to use this attack one game to put a Research Juniper back on top of the deck so that I can draw more cards. So that can be helpful in a pinch. 3 copies of Garbodor. If you want to run 4, you can run 4. Truthfully, I only have 3 of this card. I didn't realize that when I was first building this deck, that I only had 3, and I didn't realize it again when I looked at this deck, and it's like, oh, I only have 3. 3 suffices just because of the way we play the deck. However, if you want to play the deck without the Rescue Scarf, which we'll talk about later, then you definitely want to run more Garbodor, but 3 runs pretty fine as long as you're smart with your resources. Again, that Trash Cyclone attack. 120 HP is nothing good at all, honestly. You're going to be getting 1-hit KO'd always in return, so it's not worth investing in any tools that would beef up your defense because you are about 200 HP off of living any attack in the expanded format. So, yeah, he's pretty cool, though. We love this attack. Just face big multi-prizers, essentially. You're not going to beat single prizers with this very often, but multi-prizers, we can do that. Play this deck, it's almost like a mini Volcarona V. If you've played Volcarona V, it plays in a similar manner, however it is a stage 1, so we have to be a little bit more resource competent, as well as we have to thin our deck for that space that the stage 1s take up. But we do play the Blitzel and Zebstrika engine. This is the optimal Blitzel, as I talked about in my Volcarona video. You do have to play this Blitzel. I'm not going to show the other Blitzels, they're not worth talking about. There is some with 70 HP, but the main important thing is that it has 70 HP and it has the great Smash Kick attack, which does 10 damage for 1 energy. I say great. I've only won 2 games ever with the attack, but I have won 2 games with the attack. Actually today, with these Garbodor testing videos that testing games that I did, I took a knockout on a Lugia V-Star that had been hit for 210 damage and then had gotten hit by a bursting balloon. So I was able to come in and finish them off with a Smash Kick. So yeah, this is worth playing because of the attack cost, so definitely play this one. We got 3 copies of Zebstrika from Lost Thunder, one of my favorite sets of all time. Zebstrika is here for its sprint ability. Once during your turn, you may discard your hand and draw 4 cards. Great consistency, and because we need to be discarding cards every single turn, that is definitely important to have. The first turn, we can use cards like Dedenne and Crobat to get things into the discard pile, but after turn 1, we're going to have to rely on renewable discard ability in the form of Zebstrika. If you want to take this deck a different route, you could potentially play the Make Do Cinccino as a draw engine. Something like that could possibly work, though I'm just not as big of a fan of it, but it might be even more consistent on the fact that you would get a very large hand very quickly, though you might not be able to discard as much as easily. Another way you could take this deck is playing a secondary attacker to synchronize with Garbodor. And, well, I'd love to say it's Whimsicott, because Whimsicott is my favorite tool-based attacker in Expanded. It's actually a better option in Gourgeist from Crimson Invasion, which has the same attack as Whimsicott that costs 2 colorless instead of 1 psychic. Pumpkin Bomb, before doing damage, you may discard any number of tool cards from your Pokemon. It does 40 more for each card you discarded. So is this card objectively worse than Whimsicott in other lists? Yes, Whimsicott is objectively better due to its 90 HP, giving it access to resources that this doesn't. But because of this list only playing double colorless energy, you can actually play that Gourgeist pretty successfully. I suppose another thing that you could consider playing in here would be Ability Lock Garbodor, but again, you need that discard thing, so if you've ever seen Garbodor with the Ability Lock, we will bring him up real quick. Garbodor from Dragon's Exalted and Breakpoint, which when it has a tool attached, limits abilities. Not only do you have to have a tool attached, which sucks, but then you're limiting your abilities. I did play Alolan Muck in here, but I was never getting into play, so I took it out. And the only other thing I consider is that if you did really want to play Whimsicott, like I might try to someday, you can actually, if you play Whimsicott, because Whimsicott, I'll just show you the Whimsicott I'm talking about, keep talking about it. It's one of my favorite cards ever, the Flying Fury Whimsicott that discards tools. If you do decide to play that and play Psychic Energy in your deck, again, results not guaranteed, you can actually tack in another Garbodor that is one of the best cards ever printed, Trash-a-Lanche Garbodor from Guardians Rising, which is 20 for each item card in your opponent's discard pile, which is great for a single energy. So there is a lot of ways you can approach this deck. I'm not saying this is the best one. I just really want to run this as like a mini Volcarona deck. Zebstrika is a really fun engine to use, so really fun and aggressive. Next up, we have the draw basics. We have Crobat V with its Dark Asset. When you play it from your hand onto your bench, you may draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. You cannot use more than 1. So we only play 1 because it's really not worth using past the first turn of the game. And if you play 2, you could potentially use 1 in the late game, but you really don't have the bench space unless it gets knocked out by an attack. Sometimes you will just give your opponent like a Crobat with like a Bursting Balloon or a Life Dew on it in the active spot just to take a hit, but realistically you're not doing that too often, so don't expect it to get knocked out unless your opponent's chasing 2 prizers. Next up we have 1 copy of Dedenne. This is playing the wrong art. I'm supposed to be playing the nice alternate art one. I don't like this one. With the Day Change ability, when you play it from your hand under your bench, you may discard your hand and draw 6. This is obviously the best draw card for this deck because it not only draws you more cards, but it discards cards from your hand. So it's a once per game more powerful version of our Sprint Zebstrika discarding your hand, except for drawing 4, we're drawing 6. So very good synchronicity with needing to get discard piled tool cards for our Trash Cyclone. We have 1 copy of Tapu Lele with its Wonder Tag ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for a supporter card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. It's actually a really good consistency for your supporter cards, getting them out of deck. We only play 6 supporter cards, and we play no Versus Seeker. This is very similar, like I said, to the idea of Volcarona, where you don't play any Versus Seeker because you just constantly piling through the deck with draw cards and not really worrying about much else. Wonder Tag does give us this ability to find our low amount of supporters on the first turn of the game, or in a pinch we can search out a supporter that we need. Energy Drive is a great attack, does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So in a pinch you can use your double colorless energies to do a quick like 80 to 100 damage, potentially scoring a knockout that you may have missed with Garbodor. You will see yourself missing knockouts because this is not certainly the high roll deck that Volcarona V can be. 1 copy of Ditto Prism Star from the Lost Thunder expansion with its Almighty Evolution. You may put any stage 1 from your hand to evolve it. So essentially this just allows you to get a 5th Trubbish and a 4th Blitzel in your deck. Any deck that plays more than 1 stage 1 line definitely should consider it. Like I said, there are potentially some options you could put in here with Ditto, like I had an Alolan Muck from Sun and Moon base. Alolan Muck is quite a cool card. It shuts off basic abilities, if we'll bring it up real quick. If it decides to cooperate with me. There we are. Alolan Muck with its power of alchemy. Each player's basic Pokemon in play have no abilities. The problem is that I just didn't find it very useful. This is very hard to set up a proper board with this deck, and realistically you're going to need your bench spots for repeated uses of Trubbish more than you're going to have to spend on hurting your opponent. So certainly it would be awesome, but we don't have it here. We have 4 copies of Professor Juniper. Discard your hand and draw 7, the most fast and consistent draw card ever printed. Well, I don't love this effect, it's here to stay, and we're going to take advantage of it. So, very good. This is the same effect as Professor's Research. If you have Professor's Research, you can play that as well. I recommend the Professor's Research Juniper Full Art, that's my favorite one. We have 1 copy of Bridget here. Search your deck for 1 basic Pokemon EX or 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. We don't have any EXs in this deck, however, we do have basic Pokemon. In any deck that plays Tapu Lele or Jirachi to search out supporters, Jirachi EX has the same ability as Tapu Lele GX has. We want to have a card like Bridget in here to get our basic Pokemon out early. This can just be so relevant. It's absolutely needed in all the decks. And I would not play a single deck without it because it's really important when you're playing an evolution deck. Sorry, I would not play any evolution deck without it that has a Tapu Lele or Jirachi because you just want that opportunity to set up if things go awry. You don't have to be attacking immediately. You are a deck that just hits big Pokemon really hard. So you can take a turn to set up behind Bridget and be just fine. Getting out like 2 Trubbishes or 2 Blitzels to have a good plan for next turn is often better than hitting for a suboptimal number this turn. So yeah. You can play Gloria in this spot. Gloria from the Brilliant Stars expansion essentially does the same thing as this, however, because it says Rule Box and not specifically Pokemon EX, you can actually not grab Tapu Lele. And while this seems like a barely relevant factor, you do have energy that Tapu Lele can attack within the deck, so it's relevant to get that potential KO that you may have otherwise not had by using Tapu Lele in an extreme pinch situation. This is a very small niche that it has, that Bridget has over Gloria, but it is a relevant niche, so it's worth mentioning, and it's why you always play Bridget over Gloria. We have 1 copy of Guzma here. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active if you switch your active with Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So we're going to be targeting down our opponent's Pokemon. We're not very good at that, however. This deck did not play any Gust before, but I found that kind of insufficient because your opponent will just take their Pokemon that are slightly damaged, move them to the bench, and then if they know you don't have Gust, they can play around that. So we play 1 copy of Guzma just to give us that one time we're going to hit into something we want to hit into. Again, if you want to play this deck differently, you could put Versus Seeker in here and play more Gusting cards, make it more of a traditional deck, but I just really want to go down this Volcarona route using Zebstrika and Blitzel, and kind of just using it as a very fast engine. Next up, we have 4 copies of Battle Compressor. Search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them. This deck, no-brainer, play 4 copies of Battle Compressor. Allows you to discard your tool cards like Floatstone, Bursting Balloon, Scarf, and Muscle Band. When I'm using Battle Compressor in this deck, I really want to discard multiple tools, but you usually want to leave one of each to give yourself an option if you potentially draw into a tool that you'd want to use. So if I have, let's just say, 3 Rescue Scarves and 2 Muscle Bands in the deck, I'll discard 2 Rescue Scarves and a Muscle Band, usually with Battle Compressor, unless I'm specifically aiming to find like a Rescue Scarf from which I discard just the Muscle Bands off of Battle Compressor. It's often just whatever your priorities are, but generally leave yourself options because options can change games. We have 4 copies of Quick Ball here. You can only play this card if you discard another card from your hand. Search your deck for a basic Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. This is the best basic search we have in Expanded. It's definitely worth playing over Nest Ball and other basic search options here because we have the discard synergy. We want to put cards in the discard pile anyway, so might as well discard them with Quick Ball and set up our board while we're at it. Notably, it also grabs our basic consistency Pokemon, Crobat, Dedenne, and Lele, which can help us draw through the deck in the early turns of the game. 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards from your hand. If you can't discard 2 cards, you can't play it. search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So what we use this for is that we're going to need to get our evolutions. Again, the discard synergy with the discard 2 cards is equally good with Quick Ball because we can discard tool cards to pay for the cost of the attack, knowing we'll be able to get them back later with Trash Cyclone. It's going to be great for searching out, especially Zebstrika and Garbodor, are 2 evolutions that cannot be searched out with Quick Ball. We play 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher. Choose one, put a Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. This card is great for recovering Pokemon, but be careful. You can sometimes be forced to discard these on early turns of the game, and that will definitely make you have to choose different decisions later on regarding what tools you attach to your Pokemon. So be very resourceful with your Rescue Stretchers, and be careful because this deck goes pretty fast. We have 1 copy of Adventure Bag. Search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon tool cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. I'm not sure if this is the best card to play in this deck, however, it is still pretty good. What we want to do with Adventure Bag is search out 2 tool cards out of our deck, either to use for a specific attack, like if we want to attach a tool to do more damage, or to get Garbodor if we want to use it as a utility, or we can search tools to use them as discard fodder for cards like Ultra Ball and Quick Ball. It's really up to you how you use this card. You could cut it if you want and invest more in other cards, but I do think it is pretty good in the deck. We have 1 copy of Special Charge. Shuffle 2 Special Energy from your pile into your deck. What this allows you to do is just recover a few Special Energies. Notably, 7 should really be enough. However, because we are discarding our deck early and just destroying our resources often, you're going to want to have a Special Charge in the deck to at least recharge 1 energy into the deck to make sure you get over that hump and don't run out of Special Energy. There's nothing worse than playing a deck and not having enough energy to finish the game out. We play our tools now, so we play a lot of tools because we obviously need to power up our Trash Cyclone attack since it's based on the amount of tools in the discard pile. Starting off, we have 4 Floatstone. The Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat. I think this is an absolute no-brainer 4 of card in this deck. Any deck that's reliant on tools really needs to put Floatstone first and foremost. And the reason for that is you need to be able to pivot into your right attacker, and you need to be able to set up constant pivots for the rest of the game. Usually you're going to want to attach this to a Pokemon that won't be gusted often, such as Zebstrika, because it is a single prize Pokemon. Your opponent's not going to be targeting it on the bench, and you can put it on that Pokemon and just continually retreat with it after you get knocked out in order to set up your next attacker. It is really, really good. Potentially, if you wanted, you could go all in on things like Air Balloon, Floatstone, like I did on some of my Whimsicott builds, but I don't think it is, unfortunately, good to do so anymore, because you really only need 4. You're not going to want to have too many of these in play, though, I will warn you, because, again, tools are kind of hard to remove without getting knocked out, so you want to have as many of these in the discard pile as possible while keeping 1 in play to retreat the pivot of your choice. We have 3 copies of Bursting Balloon. When this Pokemon's attached, or if this card is attached to one of your Pokemon, discard it at the end of your opponent's turn. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is either active and is damaged by an opponent's attack, put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So what this card does is that if you have a Trubbish or a Garbodor in the active, maybe you throw up a Blitzel in the early game because you just really need that Blitzel to die and not something else, you can put a Bursting Balloon on there, and it does 2 things. First of all, the card will get discarded regardless if it's used or not at the end of your opponent's next turn, meaning you get another card in the discard pile to fuel your Trash Cyclone. And second of all, if it is activated, it will put a very good 60 damage on the opponent's active Pokemon, which can be used to power up your attacks. 60 damage seems like no joke, but it really is. Especially after the tool discards itself, you've effectively received 90 damage from a single tool card going off. It can't sometimes be the answer because sometimes you really need that knockout then and there, and that's why we play Muscle Band. Muscle Band boosts your damage by 20 to your opponent's active Pokemon. This allows your Trash Cyclone just to hit for 20 more damage. Do keep in mind that a Muscle Band of this card is doing 30 more damage, so sometimes it's just better to discard Muscle Band. But oftentimes you're going to have multiple tools in hand and not enough ways to discard them. discard the tools that aren't Muscle Band, and then attach Muscle Band for an extra 20 damage on your attack. That's the way I like to use it anyway. Next up, a really important tool card that I've talked about a few times now is Rescue Scarf. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack, put that Pokemon into your hand, but discard all attached cards. What this allows you to do is attach this to Garbodors and get them back after they've been KO'd, giving you back both a Trubbish and a Garbodor, or potentially a Ditto Prism Star that has evolved into a Garbodor, as well as the Garbodor. This is great for allowing you to chain your attacks. You do still need to find that energy again, but it's just an absolutely great way to negate the fact that you have to often discard the Rescue Stretchers very haphazardly, whereas Rescue Scarf is a card that reuses itself over and over and is recycling your Garbodors. Potentially, if you wanted to, you could even play more copies of any of these tool cards I've talked about. If you wanted to build a deck with Garbodor more focused on just doing direct damage, Muscle Band might be a card you'd play, or you might play Choice Band and Choice Belt. Choice Band hits 30 more damage on GX and EX Pokemon from the active spot, and Choice Belt hits 30 more damage on Pokemon V. So depending on if you want to hit more damage, you could play those. I personally just prefer Muscle Band though for its all-around usability. If you want to build a deck that's just ultra consistent, not always having a Garbodor in the active spot, you may want to up your Rescue Scarf count. And if you want to build a deck that just maximizes damage going back into your turn, for some opportunity cost, we have Bursting Balloon that you could up to 4 copies. I think 3-3-2 is a decent split. However, you could definitely invest in one of the strengths if you like that play style more than one another. We have 1 copy of Life Dew here. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out, your opponent takes 1 fewer prize card. This is our A-Spec of choice. If you weren't going to play this A-Spec, I would definitely invest in another tool like a Muscle Band, Rescue Scarf, or Bursting Balloon, as previously stated, because the number of tool cards feels pretty good as it is right now, and if you do take that away, you have to add something back in its place. You could potentially play an A-Spec like Computer Search in this deck, or Dowsing Machine. Computer Search is a card that allows you to discard 2 cards from your hand and search your deck for any card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So it's a great consistency option. The reason I decided to play Life Dew in this deck specifically, though, is because of its implications with Trash Cyclone. We can attach a Life Dew to our Garbodor, it gets knocked out, it won't give up a prize, and then miraculously the Life Dew will come back into our deck after our next Trash Cyclone attack, meaning that we can loop this card possibly even up to 3 times. My biggest concern with Life Dew is that we honestly run out of Garbodors and energy. After you've used it for about 2 times, you're not going to be able to throw like an 8th Garbodor at your opponent, which is the unfortunate thing about it. But it is really good for buying you some time and getting you some extra KOs that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten a chance to get. We played 1 Stadium here, 1 copy of Chaotic Swell. Whenever either player plays a Stadium card from their hand, discard that Stadium card after discarding this one. We don't really have a stadium that would benefit us as much as any other, so we decided to play a neutral stadium that just keeps our opponent's stadiums out of our business. We do play 7 copies of Energy, 4 DCE, and 3 Twin is really good to round off the list. I think you definitely want to play 4 DCE over 4 Twin because of that opportunity cost to attack with Tapu Lele GX with its Energy Drive attack. However, if you want to play something else, potentially a counter energy, which can work as 2 energy when behind and allow you to use even other types of energy costs, such as the Crobat V's attack, you could potentially play this, but the inconsistency of this card has proven itself to be not great in most of my decks, so I don't play it here. That's anyway all I have to talk about this deck today. Give it a try on the ladder, maybe modify it a bit to your own liking, and maybe you can create an even better list than I can. My lists aren't perfect, that's why I'm sharing them with you, and maybe you can make something out of it that you like even more. Thank you guys so much for watching though. I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully some tabletop TCG content coming soon.